Imagine waking up living through the worst day of your life, going to sleep, and waking up to that exact same day again. Not once, not twice, but forever. That's exactly what happens to Phil Connors, a talented weatherman who's about to learn that sometimes the biggest storm isn't outside, it's inside you. Phil works for a local TV station in Pittsburgh. On camera, he's charming, energetic, and always smiling. But the second the cameras stop rolling, his real personality comes out. He's arrogant, rude, and convinced he's destined for bigger things. Today marks his fourth assigning the annual Groundhog Day festival in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, a tradition he absolutely despises. During the drive, Phil spends the entire trip complaining. He calls the festival ridiculous, mocks the town, and even laughs at the people who genuinely enjoy it. His producer, Rita, finds the event wholesome and charming, but Phil can't understand why anyone would care about a weather-predicting groundhog. The moment they arrive, his attitude gets even worse. He refuses to stay at the hotel because he claims he had a terrible experience there years ago. Luckily, Rita already booked him into a nearby bed and breakfast instead. Trying to be friendly, she invites Phil to join her and cameraman Larry for dinner. Phil immediately declines, throws in a sarcastic insult about the town's food, and walks away. Once he's gone, Rita and Larry can only laugh at how impossible he is to work with. The next morning, Phil wakes up at exactly 6:00 a.m. to the song "I Got You Babe." The radio hosts mention that a blizzard is heading toward town, but Phil confidently dismisses it. After all, he's the meteorologist. As he leaves his room, an overly friendly guest tries making small talk about the weather. Phil shuts him down with a sarcastic remark. Downstairs, the cheerful innkeeper asks the exact same question. Instead of giving a normal answer, Phil launches into an unnecessarily dramatic weather forecast just to show off his expertise. The room goes awkwardly silent. She politely asks whether he'll be checking out today. Phil replies with absolute confidence, 100%. Outside, a homeless man asks for spare change. Phil pretends to search his pockets before walking away without giving him anything. Then his luck gets even worse. An unbelievably cheerful insurance salesman named Ned recognizes him from high school. Phil has no memory of the guy. Unfortunately, Ned remembers everything. He follows Phil down the street, talking non-stop while Phil desperately looks for an escape. Finally, Phil slips away, only to step directly into an icy puddle. Perfect. At Gobbler's Knob, the annual Groundhog Day celebration is already in full swing. Thousands of people gather to watch the famous groundhog Punxsutawney Phil predict whether winter will continue. Phil begins filming his report, explaining the tradition with the enthusiasm of someone reading a warning label. According to legend, if the groundhog sees its shadow, there will be 6 more weeks of winter. If it doesn't, spring will arrive early. The town officials pretend to interpret the groundhog's prediction before announcing 6 more weeks of winter. The crowd groans. Phil wraps up the segment with one final sarcastic jab at the entire event. Rita asks if they can film another take with a little more enthusiasm. Phil refuses. As far as he's concerned, the job is finished. Finally, it's time to leave this town behind. Or so he thinks. While driving home, the team discovers the highway has been closed. The blizzard Phil confidently insisted would never arrive has arrived. A state trooper refuses to let anyone pass. Instead of admitting he was wrong, Phil argues with the officer, insisting it's just a few snowflakes. The officer isn't impressed. They have no choice but to turn back. Phil tries calling the weather station for help, but the storm has knocked out every long-distance phone line. To make matters worse, someone accidentally smacks him in the face with a snow shovel while clearing the sidewalk. At this point, the universe seems determined to ruin his day. That evening, Rita and Larry invite him to the Groundhog Day banquet. Phil turns them down without a second thought. He'd rather spend the night alone. Back in his room, even the shower refuses to cooperate. The water is freezing cold. Miserable, exhausted, and convinced the day couldn't possibly get any worse, Phil finally falls asleep. The next morning, the alarm clock reads 6:00 a.m. "I Got You Babe" begins playing once again. The radio hosts cheerfully announce, "It's Groundhog Day," and Phil frowns. Didn't yesterday already happen? He looks outside. The snowstorm is gone. Confused, he heads downstairs. The same guest greets him with the exact words. The innkeeper asks the exact same questions. The homeless man stands on the exact same corner. And just when Phil thinks things can't get any stranger, Ned appears, with the exact same smile, the exact same greeting, and the exact same endless conversation. Phil escapes, only to step into the exact same icy puddle. Again, something is seriously wrong. At the festival, everything unfolds exactly as it did yesterday. The same announcements, the same jokes, the same prediction. Even the crowd reacts the same way. Completely shaken, Phil asks Rita to slap him. She happily obliges. The slap hurts. But the nightmare doesn't end. After another cold shower and another failed attempt to call home because of the blizzard, Phil tries one last experiment. Before going to bed, he snaps a pencil in half and leaves the broken pieces on the bedside table. If tomorrow is really tomorrow, the pencil should still be broken. But when the alarm rings at 6:00 a.m. once again, the pencil is whole, and Phil realizes something impossible. He's trapped in the same day, over and over again. The next morning, Phil shoots out of bed the moment the alarm goes off, 6 o'clock. "I got you, babe." Not again. He immediately checks the pencil he snapped in half the night before. It's perfectly intact. At this point, there's no denying it anymore. Somehow, yesterday has reset. Phil rushes downstairs, ignoring everyone in his path. The chatty guest greets him with the same line, the innkeeper asks the same questions, and outside, the homeless man is standing in the exact same spot. Then comes Ned, with the exact same introduction, the exact same handshake, the exact same enthusiasm. Phil bolts in the opposite direction, only to step into the same freezing puddle. At the festival, every single event unfolds exactly as before. Phil already knows every joke before it's told and every announcement before it's made. Hoping someone can explain what's happening, he asks Rita to meet him after the broadcast. Over lunch, Phil tells her something completely unbelievable. He claims he's reliving the same day over and over again. Rita assumes he's either exhausted or losing his mind. Trying to prove it, Phil predicts that Larry will walk in any second and announce the highway is closed because of the blizzard. Right on cue, Larry walks in and says exactly that. Even then, Rita isn't convinced. Maybe it was just a lucky guess. Running out of options, Phil visits a doctor, convinced something is wrong with his brain. After a full examination, the doctor finds absolutely nothing. Healthy. Next, he visits a psychologist. Unfortunately, hearing that you're trapped in an endless time loop isn't exactly covered in therapy school. The psychologist has no answers either. That night, Phil drowns his frustration at a bowling alley with two local guys. After a few drinks, they start joking about life. One of them says if there were no tomorrow, he'd do whatever he wanted. Phil pauses. No tomorrow, no consequences. That idea changes everything. For the first time since the loop began. Phil smiles. The next reset, he decides to test the limits. He steals money, drives recklessly, leads police officers on a ridiculous chase through town. He even races across train tracks just seconds before a train crashes through. When the police finally surround him, Phil doesn't panic. He casually pretends to order fast food from one of the officers. Needless to say, the joke doesn't land, he's thrown straight into jail. But the following morning, he's back in bed. 6 o'clock. I got you, babe. The jail cell is gone. The police have forgotten everything. Nothing he does matters. Phil has discovered the ultimate cheat code. From that point on, he stops worrying about consequences. He stuffs himself with pancakes, trees, bacon, cake, basically enough food to make a doctor cry. He chain smokes while drinking coffee like it's water. When Rita warns him about his health, Phil simply shrugs. What are they gonna do? Kill me? Tomorrow, his body resets anyway. Then he starts having a little more fun. He punches Ned the moment he sees him. Avoids the infamous puddle with perfect timing. Even predicts when a waitress will accidentally drop an entire tray of dishes. Everyone around him is shocked. To Phil, it's just another Tuesday. Or rather, another February 2nd. Soon he realizes the loop gives him something even more valuable than freedom. Unlimited practice. He starts learning everything about the people around him. One woman named Nancy catches his attention. The first day, he simply introduces himself. The next reset, he remembers where she grew up. Another reset, her favorite drink. Another, her hobbies. Another, her dreams. To Nancy, it feels like she's met the perfect man. To Phil, he's simply memorized the answers. Within a few loops, Nancy is completely charmed. She even invites him home. Everything goes exactly according to Phil's plan, until he accidentally calls her Rita. The mood dies instantly. Trying to recover, Phil blurts out the most random proposal imaginable. Will you marry me? Nancy immediately throws him out. Well, that strategy clearly needs some work. But romance isn't the only thing Phil perfects. Since every resets, he begins memorizing everyone's routines. One afternoon, he notices 2 security guards leaving an armored truck unattended for just a few seconds. Most people would never have enough time. Phil has infinite attempts. After countless resets, he memorizes every movement down to the second. When the perfect day arrives, he casually walks over, grabs a bag full of cash, and strolls away before anyone even realizes it's missing. Later that night, he's driving around town in a luxury sports car wearing a cowboy outfit. Because honestly, why not? If tomorrow erases everything, today can be absolutely ridiculous. But despite all the money, the thrills, and the endless freedom, something still feels empty. Eventually, Phil realizes there's only one person whose opinion actually matters. Rita. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he genuinely wants her to like him. Unfortunately, winning Rita's heart is going to be much harder than robbing a bank. After countless repeated days, Phil finally realizes something. Money doesn't matter. Rules don't matter. Nothing he does lasts. But one thing never changes. Rita. No matter how many times the day resets, she's still the only person whose opinion he genuinely cares about. So Phil decides to do the impossible. He's gonna make Rita fall in love with him. The only advantage he has is time. An unlimited amount of it. He starts small. Every loop, he learns something new about her. Her favorite drink, her favorite dessert, the kind of music she enjoys, the books she reads, the type of man she dreams of being with. Whenever he makes a mistake, he simply waits for tomorrow, which is still February 2nd. Eventually, Phil becomes the perfect gentleman. He orders Rita's favorite drink before she even asks. He surprises her with thoughtful compliments. He even teaches himself French overnight. Well, overnight after hundreds of repeated overnights. Rita is genuinely impressed. For the first time, they spend the entire afternoon together. Phil shows her beautiful hidden spots around town that he's discovered after reliving the day hundreds of times. They build a snowman. A group of kids starts a snowball fight, and before long, both of them are laughing like children. Later, they dance beneath the lights at a quiet gazebo. Everything feels perfect. As they walk back together, Rita smiles and admits something. This has been the perfect day. Phil can hardly believe it. After everything he's been through, he's finally getting somewhere. Back at the bed and breakfast, the two begin kissing. Phil is convinced he's won. But then, he makes the same mistake he always does. Instead of letting the moment happen naturally, he tries to force it. He desperately tells Rita he loves her. He begs her to stay. Suddenly, Rita stops smiling. She realizes Phil somehow knows everything about her. It feels less like romance and more like manipulation. She accuses him of rehearsing every station just to seduce her. Then, she slaps him across the face. Hard, the day resets. Phil tries again. Another perfect date, another slap. Again, another attempt, another slap. No matter what he changes, every version ends exactly the same way. For the first time since entering the loop, Phil can't solve the problem. Eventually, he stops trying. The endless repetition begins crushing him. Some days he doesn't even bother leaving his room. He spends the entire day drinking alone and watching television. Other days he ruins his weather report on purpose, mocking everyone around him. Sometimes he smashes his alarm clock before the song even finishes playing. Nothing helps. One morning, while giving another sarcastic report at the Groundhog Day festival, Phil looks at the famous groundhog and has a ridiculous idea. Maybe the groundhog is causing the loop. If that's true, he knows exactly what to do. As soon as the ceremony ends, Phil grabs Punxsutawney Phil, jumps into the festival truck, and speeds away. The police immediately give chase. Rita and Larry watch in complete disbelief as their weatherman kidnaps the town's most famous animal. The chase turns into absolute chaos. Phil barrels through fences, tears across open fields, and heads straight toward a construction site. Police cars surround him from every direction. There's nowhere left to go, so Phil keeps driving, straight toward the edge of a cliff. The truck launches into the air and explodes in a massive fireball. Surely, that has to end the loop, right? The next morning, 6:00 a.m. I got you, babe. Phil opens his eyes. A lion. That was the moment he realized something terrifying. He wasn't trapped in the town, he was trapped with himself. With nothing left to lose, Phil falls into complete despair. If crashing off a cliff doesn't work, maybe something else will. Over the following loops, he tries every possible way to end his suffering. He steps in front of traffic, jumps from buildings, electrocutes himself, even drops a toaster into a bathtub. Every single time, he wakes up in the same bed, listening to the same song, living the same day. No matter how he dies, tomorrow always finds him. Eventually, Phil gives up trying to escape. Instead, he tells Rita the truth. He calmly explains that he's been living the same day for longer than anyone could imagine. Naturally, she thinks he's completely insane, so Phil begins proving it. He predicts exactly what every person inside the diner is about to do. He knows who's about to speak, who'll spill coffee, who'll drop a tray of dishes. When it all happens exactly as he said, Rita's smile disappears. Then Phil starts just describing her life in astonishing detail. Her favorite drink, her college major, the dreams she's never told anyone. He even writes down the exact sentence Larry is about to say when he walks through the door. Seconds later, Larry repeats it word for word. Rita is speechless. For the first time, someone believes him, and for the first time in what feels like an eternity, Phil doesn't have to face tomorrow alone. After witnessing everything Phil predicted come true, Rita finally accepts the impossible. He's really trapped in the same day. Instead of running away, she chooses to stay with him. For the rest of the evening, the two wander around town together. Phil performs impossible card tricks, not because he's lucky, but because he's practiced them thousands of times. He casually catches playing cards in a hat from across the room, making Rita laugh. Despite the fun, Phil can't hide how exhausted he is. He admits that tomorrow she'll wake up with no memory of any of this, while he'll have to start all over again. Rita looks at him sympathetically. Instead of seeing the time loop as a curse, she suggests he treat it as a gift. If tomorrow never comes, she says, then today can be whatever you choose. That simple sentence changes everything. Later that night, Rita falls asleep beside him. Phil gently kisses her forehead and quietly whispers, I love you, not because he expects anything in return, but because for the first time he truly means it. The next morning, 6 o'clock. I got you, babe. The loop isn't over, but Phil is different. Instead of feeling disappointed, he gets out of bed with a smile. Outside, the homeless man asks for spare change. This time, Phil doesn't ignore him. He gives him everything in his wallet. He even buys coffee and pastries for Rita and Larry before they arrive at the festival. Rather than complaining about work, he eagerly helps move the camera equipment and suggests better angles for the broadcast. For once, everyone enjoys working with him. With endless time on his hands, Phil begins learning things simply because he wants to. He reads classic literature, studies medicine, learns French, practices ice sculpting, and spends countless hours mastering the piano. After what could have been decades or even centuries of repetition, Phil transforms from an arrogant weatherman into someone remarkably talented. More importantly, he becomes kind. Even the people who once annoyed him now receive a warm smile. The overly friendly man in the hallway finally gets the conversation he's always wanted. When Ned runs into him again, Phil surprises him with a hug and tells him it's great to see him. Poor Ned is so confused that he practically runs away. One evening, Phil notices the homeless man shivering in the cold. He rushes him to the hospital, but despite everyone's efforts, the old man dies. Phil refuses to accept it. Surely there's a way to save him. Over countless loops, he tries everything. He feeds him, keeps him warm, calls an ambulance sooner, brings him to the hospital earlier. Nothing works. The old man dies It's the first thing Phil can't fix, and it teaches him an important lesson. Some parts of life simply can't be controlled. Rather than giving up, Phil decides to make every repeated count. He memorizes everyone's routines, not to manipulate them anymore, but to help them. He catches a little boy who falls from a tree, changes a flat tire for two elderly women, performs the Heimlich maneuver on a man choking in a restaurant, helps strangers before they even realize they need it, slowly without expecting praise. Phil becomes the nicest person in town. That evening, a charity party is held. Phil sits at the piano and plays beautifully, leaving everyone speechless. Then he casually carves an elegant ice sculpture of Rita. She's stunned. She barely recognizes the man standing before her. This isn't the sarcastic weatherman who hated everything. This is someone completely different. Later, the town hosts a bachelor auction to raise money for charity. To everyone's surprise, nearly every woman wants to bid on Phil. A bidding war breaks out. Rita refuses to lose. She keeps raising the price until she finally wins. Larry volunteers afterward, but no one bids on him. An elderly woman eventually offers $25, and the room bursts into laughter. Out Phil and Rita walk through the snowy streets together. This time, Phil doesn't try to impress her. He doesn't pretend to be perfect. He simply tells her the truth. No matter what happens tomorrow, I'm happy because I love you. Rita smiles. This time, she doesn't slap him. She kisses him. For the first time since the nightmare began, everything feels real. The two spend the night together. Then, morning arrives. The alarm clock clicks to 6:00 a.m. Phil sighs. Not again, but before the song can finish, Rita reaches over and switches off the radio. Phil freezes. She remembers. He slowly looks out the window. The snowstorm from yesterday is still there. The calendar finally reads February 3rd. The loop is over. Phil laughs in disbelief. After what may have been decades trapped in a single day, tomorrow has finally arrived. As he and Rita step outside together, Phil looks around the town he once couldn't wait to escape. And together they walk into a future that's finally moving forward. Sometimes escaping the loop isn't about finding the right answer. It's about becoming the right person. Thank you for watching. Have a lovely time.